Before the film, I think it's a good idea to have an introduction of who is Luis Barragán, what he did before the house that we're going to see, and what he did after the house, because this house, his own house, was built in 1947. Barragan was born in 1902, and he died in 1988. So this house is in the middle of his whole life. He made his own house, and he lived from 47 until he died. I always like to start with this, to talk about the sensibility of Barragan. When he was walking with another partner, Andres Casillas, in this part of between these trees avenue, that later on he will build for a horse drive street. And he say, Andres, why don't we build a white wall so the shadow of a tree can rest? So he built this white wall so the shadow of the tree could rest. That's when I understand what a poetic of architecture was about it. What a very simple question, very simple answer to a great thing, no, to a very, I don't know what to say, but this poet, no? Well, Barragan was born in Guadalajara, and he is like, he lives in like two worlds. Guadalajara, in the left side, you could see a city in the west part of the country, very influenced by French ideas in the late 19th century. And of course, the hacienda, which Barragan's father used to have, which is like a ranch for very wealthy, economical people. So in this, between these two walls, Barragan raised his life. Next. And who is now, afterward, Barragan was a very good writer, no? He liked very much to travel, a lot of books, especially French literature like Voltaire, Proust, also the Roman Marco Aurelio, and of course the popular things about Mexico. So Barragan's work, we can divide it like in very, very clear three parts. The first part was in Guadalajara from 1925, that he finished his school. Let me tell you something. He studied civil engineer, and he got a degree by studying one semester more, and they give you the degree of architecture. Well, that's the first stage of Barragan, 1925 to 1931. The second stage was in Mexico City. He leaves Guadalajara and stayed in Mexico City from 1931, well, through his death, but this is what he built during these 7 years, very modern rationalism architecture. And then the last part, from 1942, that he built his first house in Mexico City, through 1978, who builds the last building he did. As you can see, from 1947, he only built 8 or 10 things. That is very amazing about Barragan's work. So we are going to talk about very shortly about these three parts, because I want to transmit to you that the house of Barragan is not like a geniality of a genius architect for one idea. I think it's a process that you will see it very clear how he got to the house he built. In 1925, he made his first trip to France, and he discovered this fantastic architect, poet, gardener, Ferdinand Bach, who make very few architecture, gardens, and really influenced Barragan, because Barragan was discovered that he really liked gardens, and this idea of a Mediterranean architecture goes very well with Guadalajara's weather and everything. So he goes to Guadalajara, and let's see what he did in 1928. This is the house of a friend of Barragan, González Luna, and you can see all the ideas of Ferdinand Bach, really put it like almost literally the same, and with the materials of the area of Guadalajara, but very rich in clay and many things. So you can see the similarities to the style of Bach. He started in this house to make the use of the upstairs level of the house, of the terrace, that we will see it in their own house. But you know, in 1928, he started doing with the artisanal glasses, a new way to look at the windows. So he was always looking for more. And in this house in 1928, we can see it very clearly. You can see there's another houses that he did at that time, between 1925 and 1930. This is the way, very inspired in what he looked of Ferdinand Bach. You can see some of the gardens of Bach in Menton, in the south part of France, near Italy. So if you want to go there, I think it's a wonderful place to go. Then in 1935, he visited against France, but with a different view. Now he visits Le Corbusier. There is a letter there with a sketch of Le Corbusier doing a sketch how to get to Villa Savoie, now personally by Le Corbusier to Barragan. So Barragan entered to the modernists, I think Barragan needs to go to this way, and look what he did, just coming back from France to visiting Le Corbusier and the modern movement next. This is what Barragan just made in Mexico City, this kind of architecture that you can imagine that was made by Barragan, but that's what he made. He made those buildings are not in very well shape, because all these buildings he made for sale, like a business. So there is not a specific line for these buildings, so they are not in a good shape. They are still being sold to one another, but now finally now the owners know what they have, and they start to taking a good care of it. So this is what Barragan did until 1940. Then in 1943, he meets one special guy. It's Chucho Reyes. Chucho Reyes was a painter, he used to have an antique store, and he used to wrap all the things that he sells with China paper, and he makes his drawings like this roster there. And the people start going after, better to go to see these paintings than for the antique things. He was also an inventor. He was very sensitive about popular Mexican art. No, like this is Barragan in his house with this we call Judas, a very giant piece of papel I don't know, mache paper. And he was also very devout of the Virgin of Dolores. They make a very popular altars. And all this tradition really makes Barragan another way to look architecture, another way to look life, another way to look art. Barragan, at the speech of the acceptance of the Pritzker Prize, said a special note to Chucho Reyes in a grateful way to see that he really appreciates the fresh way of seeing, the innocent way of seeing that Chucho Reyes gave to Barragan. And that's what Barragan really opened a new world to him. Well, Chucho Reyes opened to Barragan really a new way of seeing things, seeing art. And for example, the color. What about the color of Barragan? I think Barragan has like two fathers. One, Rationalism, Joseph Albers, who was a friend of him. He really met Albers and Annie Albers too. And it has all these rational, we have the book in the house, this big book of Albers about color. And then the sensitive, popular use of color in Mexico in the paintings of Chucho Reyes, and the way the popular people, how paints their houses, the columns, very casual, where the colors of the sand of the places, or the colors of very festive things. No, this is the set of color that was inspired to Barragan. Well, to start talking about the house, it's important to talk about where the Barragan's house is. What is the neighborhood? The neighborhood is Tacubaya. Tacubaya was a place outside of the historic city. No, in the outside, it's a very rich area of water. And that's what Barragan select for living. When Barragan bought the place, it was already inside the city. Well, the story tells us that Barragan went to this place to buy a dog, and he bought the property with the dogs. There was a big property, and he built the high left, he built his first home in 1942 with a large of a garden, very beautiful garden. It's the only garden that exists now of Barragan. We could see these ideas of the Quirico was one of his favorite paintings. I remember of what the Quirico, this surrealism world, and he makes their own property there. Also, one special thing is when he was doing his house, he was doing also El Pedregal, this garden place of volcanic rock, we're talking later on. In a very popular part of the city, this is just neighborhoods of Barragan. This is the facade of the house of Barragan, really just integrated to the community, not making like I am here with a special house, no, just being one more in the community. This is the altar near the place, so you can see the house is not, it's curious that Barragan always had too much control about the books that was publishing about his own work, so he never wanted to publish this facade until he was dead. I don't know why, but I think it's very simple. It's not you can imagine what is behind this facade. What this house about? I'm not going to talk too much about this house because we are going to see the film about it. But I think Barragan in this house, he gets back the forgotten language of the convents, the cloisters, with words that doesn't speak anymore in modern architecture in that time. That was mystery, light, places that evoke silence. That was not a language. That's the language that Barragan brought from this 16th century architecture, and with this new sensitive that Chucho Reyes gave to him. I think this is a very nice, it says, si quieres casa bonita, Don Luisito Barragán architecture. If you want a nice house, go with Luis Barragán architect. This is a picture of called the Pueblo Mexicano, Mexican town, made by José Clemente Orozco, one of the best painters in Mexico. And I think it reflects very well what they're looking for Barragan, which is modernism and tradition. I think it fits very well. This picture was always present in his house. You will see it in the film. Like a statement always present about what is Mexican people. We are the mix of modernism and tradition. I was today at Rietveld Schroeder house, and it did suggest to me that all this design by detail, don't forget 1947, the house is full of this detailing, that technology didn't have. So you have to invent yourself, the thing to see the door, the mailbox, the drawers, everything was fixed and designed by Barragan. This is small detailing suggests me this Rietveld house. Well, this is the Barragan's car. With this, I would like to talk about what architecture is about, temporality. This is a Cadillac 1957. It was 10 years older than his house. And I always finish, when I make the visit guide to someone, I finish with this, with the car. So you can see the car, 1957, a design piece, but it looks 1957, it looks old. And this is the house of Barragan, 1947. I don't think it looks as old as the car, and it's what's about, I think, architecture, about temporality or intemporality. This space, I think, is intemporary architecture. Doesn't have time, could be done yesterday or next year, By the same time he was doing his house, he bought a big land in El Pedregal, in the south part of Mexico City, which was produced 2,000 years ago of the eruption of a volcano, and was a huge place of volcanic rock. And here with another artist, Diego Rivera, Murillo, Dr. Atl, painters, was very sensitive. This place always was like everybody talks about a bad place because could make any agricultural way. So Barragan set the eyes there. They bought a very big piece of land and do a gardens and start to make it a housing development there called Jardines, the Gardens of El Pedregal. This is a very good way, like a Japanese, the way they see the rock, the volcanic rock, in a very beauty sense of doing this. Look at this. Unfortunately, none of these gardens are survived, just very few elements around the places. But after he made El Pedregal, he sent a letter to his clients and said that he was quitting doing architecture and he was going to dedicate to her own personal things. And from that time, 1948, he only did the 10 things we saw that he did with very special clients. he don't want to do any business. He went very economical wealthy with this development. And well, one of the things that influenced Barragan very well, and that's what the thing we're talking about, these convent cloisters from the 16th century, and the Mexican Baroque, with these golden altars that were very typical of Mexican architecture. And he built, I think, one of the most great places in the world, that is this chapel to the nuns. He paid for it. He didn't charge for doing this, and he made this convent and chapel. The chapel is very short, like a little bit more bigger than this size, but this is a splendorous, magic, poetic places, well, that I ever been. I have been there a lot of times. This is the main altar with all the golden leaves, and this is the other part where these lights come from different places. It's a really magical place. This chapel is the top of the work of Barragan. Then he made this symbol of a housing development. It's an outside city named Ciudad Satélite, which is a city in the suburb part of Mexico City, really inspiring. He was just arrived from Italy, San Gimignano, and he made it with Matthias Geritz. Matthias Geritz was an artist, a German artist who has all these ideas of the Bauhaus, went to Guadalajara, and meet Barragan, and Barragan invite him to be part of this group of artists to make this. Also, Chucho Reyes was involved. And 1957, this is one of the first abstract urban sculpture in the world. All the sculpture urban was very symbolic, but like horses or not abstract things. So Barragan and Matthias Geritz was one of the first who set up the abstract art into urbanism art. Well, this is not too much known. The invitation, he was friend of Louis Kahn, this American architect. He invited Louis Kahn, that has visited Barragan's house and saw his gardens. He said, I want you to make the landscape of a new project that I have. It's the Salk Institute in La Jolla in San Diego. There's 2 buildings and a plaza, and this is supposed to have the gardens of Barragan. And Louis Kahn invites Barragan during the building constructions, and the landscape architect said to Louis Kahn, okay, we're not doing any landscape, we're just going to do a line of water between the buildings, and this is the result of the landscape architect, which is very impressive. The landscape architect said not to do landscape, just to do this is the sketch and the result of it. And I don't know if you have been there, but I think it's the most emotional, zen places I ever been, with nothing in there, just a line of water. It's just very impressive, amazing, and emotional. Then he made, with the one that I start, this part in the south, in the north part of the city. He used to ride horses very often in this area. So the people from the horses invite him to develop an area where just for the horsemen. So he developed Los Clubes, which is, he made these fountains for horses, and then the house where very important people named Cristobal Ekestrom, a Swedish commerciant, bought a big land there to have their own horses. So he built this place. It's really amazing about what the scale of the horse is about. This is the pool where the horses, they used to wash the horses. And this is like a very magical place to be in. Here you can see the ranch influence from Barragan, all this idea of a rural place, no? Well, finally, I would say this is one of the first Barragan's work and the last one, Casa Gilardi, and the one we saw, Gonzalez Luna House. And I think this phrase from Tennessee Williams is that don't give me reality, give me magic, is, I think, resume the works of Barragan. And you can see what happens to an architect from 1928 to 1977. It's amazing. I don't think that's bad, this is better or whatever. This is the process of an artist. And well, I hope you enjoy the film. It's about the house, and I hope you find the magic. Thank you.